turn my video
Yeah, just so that, like, I'm not really sure what we will talk about today. But what I felt was almost like just sitting in, like we're on the precipice. People are getting on airplanes right now, and the first group of people will arrive this afternoon, and then more will arrive continuously up to Monday. So, which is why Penny is sitting at her computer handling all of the pre-event logistics. She's like, wow, I've got 1 million messages. I'm like, I had 2. She's super busy and I'm not. That's about to change. But it is really interesting to be in this moment where I can sense a real significance to what is happening. And I can sense that even though this gathering is not large in numbers, we're gonna have like 50 people, 50 participants. But it feels really significant in where we are in the process, like what's happening in the world and how things are coming into being, and sort of in that larger sense. And like I said, I don't have a specific agenda for our call today, but it just seems like we can talk about this moment we're in. Like, I know that Dan has been carrying the giant Sisyphean rock for the last year for Las Albercas, which we're going to be able to bring to a completion soon, which is sort of like, what the hell is this really happening? Like, we've had so many near hits, we don't know if we're going to hit it. But also that Tyler and I just finished, with our hands and machetes, making a network of trails across the land so we can walk people through it next week. And so there's just something with that. There's something with how people are arriving into Barichara. We had a guy 3 days ago decide to go on Twitter and crowdfund the money to pay for his travel to come here from England, because he just couldn't, he had so much FOMO, he couldn't sit on the sidelines. And so we're having these kinds of energies around us that are really interesting. So maybe let's just do an opening check-in and do a little round, see how we're all doing. I just gave you all a sense of how I'm doing. So how about if I pass it over to you, Dan? How are you doing today?
I got a good night's sleep. I haven't been able to sleep lately. I've been so stressed out with this deal I'm trying to close. We had another little flare up I didn't share with you, but we got it shut down. Luckily, my agent was right on top of it. It had to do with the with that borderline, that easement thing again. Anyway, came out of left field, but it was fixed in 1 day, and I was relieved. But it keeps me on my toes, and I've been between that and managing my family. My brother's been in Florida on vacation. They took off in fact, they had scheduled they're big Disney fans, which I just deplore Disney. But so we're at opposite ends of the spectrum politically, as well as so many other things. Anyway, they had in 2020 they were supposed to take this cruise. I don't know, probably their 15th or 17th cruise on the same Caribbean thing. Anyway, but they couldn't because of COVID. So it kept getting put off, and finally they had it teed up again, and they're down in Florida, and they got hit with Ian down there. So that makes for a lot of drama in the family, and I've been kind of caught up with that, and my mom, and she's actually doing well. My dad died, last in February, and so we've been dealing with the mourning period and all of that, and helping her through it, because they were married for their whole lives, and so she's dealing with that, and it's kind of hard for her. But so that's all I'm doing. I'm just caught up with all this drama around me, having to this thing that I'm doing with you guys. My plan here doesn't include my current wife, and that was a big decision that we've made now for some months, and now that it's coming to to the point of truth, moment of truth, it's going to be hard for her to. She doesn't. I don't think she thinks it's really going to happen. So there's that pressure. So and meanwhile, my heart is in Barichara. My heart is with the Earth Regenerators, and I feel like I'm making sacrifices every day by not paying close attention to what's happening. I try to watch. I try to join the call. I often plan to, and right 10 minutes before some crisis here, minor crisis, jumps up in front of me, and I have to attend to that, and I can't join the call, so I'm having to watch the calls recorded, which thankfully I'm grateful that you record those, because then I can actually catch up. But it's not quite the same, because I'm watching the conversation. It's like, oh, I have something to say about that, but you know, wait a minute, it's on record. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm really happy that I'm here now, and these moments that I've got with you guys really feed me, really recharge me, because I feel drained very often because of all the things I just talked about. Anyway, that's kind of where I am, Joe. I wish I could be there with you, helping set up this thing and executing
Me
with
too,
you,
brother. Me too. Oh my God.
because that's what I want to be doing. And I've been thinking these last 24 hours about, what is an ecoversity? I've tried a couple of times to watch the recording, and I just haven't been able to. The one that you guys just had a conversation about, and I'd like to hear what those points are, what people think, what they say, and so what ideas are, because I've got ideas about it, and I'm not sure how my ideas will fit into the larger scheme, but I think that we won't have a shortage of ideas. I'm sure we'll be able to produce, pursue and refine and develop great ideas all the way down the line. I'm just so excited about it. So I think that in a word, I'll say I'm excited. So I'm going to pass it along. I think I saw Jonathan there. My screen isn't showing anybody else except you, Joe, but I think Jonathan Cloud is there.
Sure.
Jonathan, you want to take the baton?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for all of that, Dan. We really haven't had a chance to talk one-on-one or get to understand each other much better. But as you can imagine, I'm pretty excited about what's happening in Barichara
Yeah.
as well, and we're totally 100% committed. Right now we're in the midst of a neighborhood activity. We decided after a year of being here and working on our property and turning it into a food forest. It looks totally different from anybody else's property around here, because it's completely covered in wood chips, and it's got young fruit trees growing and chicken wire cages and vegetable gardens with unbelievable size, stuff coming out of the ground. And we've been here exactly for 1 year. So we went around and got the neighbors together to try and do a neighborhood garage sale as a kind of a gentle way to introduce ourselves. We had a little bit in there about maybe community self-reliance might be of interest to people who weren't necessarily interested in garage sales. But that's the kind of small initiative that we're doing locally to try and reach out to some folks and see if we can increase, the resilience in the neighborhood and the engagement. At a larger scale, I'm talking with Stan about Cascadia, and we're talking about the Great Lakes Basin here with folks. And so we're fully into the ecoversity and its replication around the world. So let me pass it to Todd.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the fear of missing out. It would be really exciting to be there for Refi Barichara, but just not able. I don't have the capacity to be there. That said, my wife did encourage me to go visit at some point, so it's on my future calendar. I'm not sure if that's going to be 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. We'll see.
Where are you?
But yeah,
what state are you in? Are you in the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm in Denver, Colorado. So yeah, Dan, like you said, I'm feeling connected to the work that's going on here. I think this is really like where my roots lie. So much joy to be had kind of on a weekly basis, and just sitting in meetings and actually building kind of tools that I know are going to be helpful to the community. So this is one of those calls that brings joy, and looking forward to seeing how we can. I don't know. I guess yeah. Like Jonathan mentioned, there's this ongoing conversation of kind of what does a Cascadia bioregion look like, and I'm very much interested in what a Rocky Mountain kind of bioregion could look like, and then Jonathan's there in the Great Lakes. So I feel there's some blueprinting, bioregional blueprinting that wants to be done, and that we can start exploring here in the future. So I think the more we can start to tell an interesting story of place, I think that inherently leads to the opportunity to do some pretty meaningful fundraising. So yeah, just excited to see what's on the horizon. I'll pass it to Paula.
You're muted, Paula.
Yeah, Paula's also running around her house getting things packed because she's going to travel to Barichara soon.
Oh yeah.
Paula, are you there? Maybe while we're waiting, JP, would you like to go?
Yes. Hello, friends. I let you guys see me in my pajamas, but not on the recording. There are limits. Oh, Paula says she's here, but she'll be silent. Okay, Paula. Let's see, checking in for me. I live such a wild life, I have to say. It's from giant big picture stuff to very focused, watering of green things and everything in between. It's quite a time. Yeah, so I've come off of a conversation that's like, with the folks I'm working with on how we actually transform currency as a thing, to to actually explaining what Earth Regenerators is to a friend of mine, which was great, to really sort of recognize that we are this extraordinary experiment ongoing with a bunch of connected petri dishes, in this extraordinary lab called ER. And I'm just so grateful for those different experiments that are happening. And then I get to be part of them and be of service to them and hold space for things, and yeah, like that. So I'm pretty amazed at what my life looks like right now. And I too have, a little bit of wistfulness that I can't be there with you all at Refi Barichara, but because it would be literally right up in my wheelhouse.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
Yes, JP, yes.
And it's okay. I've spent the last month on the Australian Earth Laws Alliance's international symposia on the laws of nature and rights of nature and all of this. And I think it's just all integrating and there's some mysterious role I am to play, weaving all of these things together somehow in the future. I know that's the case. And Joe, I don't know if I've ever shared it with you. It might have very early on in ER, but I think it was right around 2008 or 2009. I had a download, and that download was the future of education. And it came called the Omniversity. but it was very much along the lines of what the Ecoversity is aiming to do. If I show you the diagram, you're going to laugh. So maybe I'll send that on to you.
Please do. I want a good laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, wow. And it came as a whole thing. I didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't something I thunk up. It's one of those things that just arrive, and I think these things are in the field. And this is why you have a lot of people running to the patent office with the same invention at the same time on different parts of the world. It's the same thing. It's like something wants us to bring this forth. So if it's not you, it'll be someone else. So yeah, anyway, that's I'm pretty happy. Plus it's wildflower season in Western Australia, and I wish I could just bring you all here to see these flowers, which are just insane. Maybe I'll post some pictures. Anyway, I'm checked in.
Please.
Onward.
Thank you, JP. Well, one thing I can say is, first, Dan, I think you are role modeling to the rest of us how to stay true to what you deeply know you need to do. I think there's so many of us who don't know how to muster that capacity and are trying to. I think, earnestly trying to. I recall like Irvi earlier this year deciding to take a sabbatical instead of taking her previous part of her life's version of a dream job, and others who are making significant changes. And you're really role modeling how to sit in that deep paradox, as shitty as it is. It's like the deeper it is, the shittier it is. And Todd, I was thinking, as you were saying about bioregion of the Rocky Mountains, and one of the people flying to us right now is Alex Corin, who's supposed to arrive in Barichara today. And so the Regenerative Community Land Trust folks, and so we will have direct collaboration between your bioregion and ours by this evening, if his flight can make it through Florida. So just how small, how small these steps really are at the moment. And I found myself holding this rock that I found today I found earlier this week at Las Albercas. And this rock is the shape of the groove that would hold a seashell. So the fossil actually would have been inside the rock. And this is what fell off the top of the seashell. And there's something about the earth holding our ancestors, in addition to, I sometimes hold the fossils like these are our ancestors, but this is the great mother holding our ancestors. And there's something so special about what Las Albercas means right now, because the shape of the land of Las Albercas is just quintessentially the sacred feminine. It's the land that births water because it has all the shape of the feminine. And so being the holder of our ancestors is a pretty powerful metaphor for me at the moment. Yeah, I feel like what we're going to be doing in these next few days, with Refi Barichara, is we're going to bring together a motley crew of people who have never been together before. Some of them from our group, like Lisa from our group, this small group here, she's flying. She's going to arrive in Barichara today if everything goes well. So we have these like really deep connections to members of our group. We've actually been asked to keep it secret, but we've started spreading it slowly, that also arriving tomorrow morning is Mila. And she actually helped bring the Kogis to Thomas Bjorkman and Lena Anderson and the group they have on an island off the coast of Sweden. So 2 weeks ago, a bunch of Kogis from Colombia went to Sweden, and Mila helped make the connection. And something told her, JP, speaking of channeling the universe told Mila to buy an expensive airline ticket and come to Barichara a couple weeks ago. So she will be flying overnight from London, bringing me digestives. For those of you who don't know, digestives are these like graham cracker type cookies covered in chocolate that are, they're sort of like England's version of Oreos, and I love them. So yeah, Paula, if you want digestives, they'll be in Barichara tomorrow. Um, I was only in London once for like a day, but I fell in love with digestives. So I get it.
No, it's just that I can't wait to meet Mila in person. Not that I do.
Okay, well, pick your poison. Pick your poison. It could be digestives or it could be Mila. It's just what the world is right now. It's so crazy. As like England's economy is eating itself to death at the moment. It's so interesting what's going on. What I want to invite for us is we are creating a narrative container for landscapes to receive money. That's many ways, that's what this Refi Barichara event is. How do we create a narrative container that can hold collaboration, that can hold design, that can hold the integration of tools, and that can hold the movement of resources, including money? And it's very interesting that the Gitcoin money is going to be released on October 13th. They have a 3-week period where they have to determine if anyone cheated and then readjust all the allocation of money and all of that. So they do that after the funding round closes. But to me, Todd, it's really telling that you introduced me to Giveth back in January. Gitcoin is a sister to Giveth in many ways in terms of functionality. And I feel like what we need to invent for bioregions is something like Vivero meets Giveth meets Gitcoin, except for bioregions. Like the common land investment model done as Gitcoin meets Giveth meets Vivero. And so there's something really, you know what I'm saying? Do you want to comment on that?
I have a lot of thoughts about this, but yeah, it would be great to talk.
Well, what are some thoughts now? Maybe drop a thought in at the moment. What's coming up for you? Nope, you're muted.
Oh, I said sorry. I'm watering the garden. I think, we've spoken about this a little bit in the Vivero groups, but Giveth is obviously kind of every 90-day they do fundraising and rounds, and I think, sorry, I mean Gitcoin. Gitcoin does fundraising and rounds, and then Giveth I kind of see having worked on their team as kind of a filler for fundraising possibilities in between those Gitcoin rounds. They do have kind of periodic, I think it's maybe a monthly opportunity to receive a return when you actually donate to Giveth projects. But I think there could be an opportunity for us to leverage these platforms, and specifically kind of building out fundraising structures specifically for bioregions. And I think Vivero is kind of well on its way to kind of blueprint what that could look like. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion that we could have, but I think the tools are very complementary to the kind of the vision that we're holding here. So
yeah, and Antonio Paglino has been talking about bioregional blockchains for about 3 years. And you and I had that conversation with Christina Bowen about bioregional commons and information commons, which I know Antonio is also keen on. And Sage, I don't know her last name, who works with Ben West at Gitcoin. Ben can't come to Refi Barichara, but Sage is coming. So we actually have another person on the cause round team at Gitcoin who's going to be here next week.
It's actually, I don't want to misspeak, but I actually saw a post this morning. I think she actually may be stepping away from that role at Gitcoin. But it sounds like she's focusing her time and energy on decentralized science projects, which I think fits very well into kind of a bioregional approach. And she obviously has done community building with Gitcoin. So stepping out of that role, she'll probably still have connections. But Antonio Paglino as well. He's a big trust guy too, which I know has been a thread that I've been pulling with you, Joe.
Yeah. No, we're basically, this is a way to say we're holding parts of your vision, Todd, and we'll be holding them for you during the next week, so that we will all be able to play together in the future. Other people who are coming and other things that are emerging that are interesting. There's this guy named Evan Hudson who showed up out of the woodwork from Dubuque, Iowa, who's like super excited to be here. And his background's interesting because he is helping create a tool set for people to, he's basically going to try and land it for tax day for people who need to report capital gains on crypto to donate crypto directly to nonprofits using a mobile app that enables the nonprofits to arise as categories of causes. Like, I want to give my money to environmental organizations. The app clusters pre-vetted environmental organizations for people to give crypto to avoid capital gains taxes at tax day. And some of these mechanisms that are happening with crypto are really interesting, where just creating these pipelines of connection are going to be really important because they're just infrastructure. You know, you can always reallocate them or retool them or repurpose them in another moment. And Evan's coming with the intention to try to get into the hedge fund capital gains world of the mainstream economy and siphon tiny little tendrils of it off to regenerative projects by just working on the sort of these places where financial reporting allows money to move to places where people can avoid taxes or get around certain loopholes. And people are gaming this to the tune of trillions of dollars for mostly nefarious means. And if you can decipher a tiny little bit off of it, it's a game changer for on the ground projects. And so someone who's just that level of, like, he's right out of the movie Fight Club, you know, these culture hackers, who knows what we'll create. And so, so I'm really intrigued by where we sit, this sort of clustering of people. And so I'm curious how each of you are sensing into this. Like, you know, I keep turning these conversations back to, what do you see that we're doing? How are you making sense of what we're doing? Because I feel like there's something about this particular meeting that we hold where what we try and feel into is, how do we activate the movement of resources? Like, money needs to move into projects. And while we're not specifically fundraising at the moment in this group, we're creating a field of storytelling, a field of awareness, a field of coherence that will help fundraising to happen. And I still sense that as like a key focus of this group. And so I just wonder, how do we see that? Like, how do you all see that from what you're seeing emerging in the field? So I'll just open it up to whoever would like to share. Big
I
question.
can start.
JP, please.
So a few weeks ago, I gave a presentation on digital assets and what they all are and blah, blah, blah for Innovate Australia. And on one of my slides, I broke out all the FIs. And it's really fascinating how this has evolved, that because decentralized finance, which came out of the blockchain, became DeFi, then people began to notice the difference between DeFi and centralized finance, which is now called CeFi. And the old world, falling into this narrative, the old world of traditional financial instruments is now called TradFi for traditional finance. And now we're adding ReFi for regenerative finance, right? It's just so fascinating to me. I just wanted to share this, like, we are the pinnacle of the evolution right now, right? That's if you really consider that, yeah, we've gone from TradFi to CeFi, DeFi at the same time, and breaking out of the old models comes ReFi. I wanted to share that because we and it is something very different, because all of the other ones are really extractive. And it's important to know, and you know, coming from a month of looking at the impact of extractivism on the planet and on society and on everything, and another update from the IPCC yesterday, that when he finished nobody had any questions and nobody could say anything. That's kind of where we are, right? So the hope that this offers and the possibility is so important, because we need an alternative to extracting ourselves into extinction. And anytime you bring up finance now, because finance isn't money, finance is this other more complex, abstract thing,
Mhm.
So to demystify things and to bring them back into, you guys all know I prefer circulation as a term, but to bring that back into the conversation, I think we could play a huge role by telling the story of how we can use this circulation to restore the harmony that wants to return. So anyway, next.
Would anyone else like to share?
I think a really interesting aspect of kind of regenerative finance in relationship to the other kind of terms that JP just brought up, TradFi, traditional finance, CFI, centralized finance, and DeFi, decentralized finance, is, I think, in the heart of regenerative finance is this understanding that you could call it biomimicry, or you could call it kind of learning from Earth and learning from nature around how ecosystems are built, and how that means that they are circulatory. There is permeability between ecosystems, meaning that if we accumulate resources, we can't but help provide benefit to surrounding ecosystems. And so I think an opportunity that I'm seeing with the work that is really being showcased in Barichara, as we accumulate resources through mechanisms like Gitcoin or Giveth, we can actually start to do capacity building in other place-based areas as well. And I think that as an opportunity to kind of enable more thoughtful giving and thoughtful care, I think is unprecedented. And this is a theme that I would say giving and care is a theme and an opportunity that blockchain and crypto has been looking for and waiting for a decade. The technologies have been around for years and years now, but they've been so quick to kind of grab onto and start to repeat some of the negative and extractive patterns of CFI or TradFi, that if we can really embrace and embody the giving and care work, I think that's where success is going to be, not just in kind of the bioregional stewardship, but in the technology side as well. So if there's any way I can contribute to that and can continue to kind of contribute to that mission and vision, that's how I'm showing up here in this space.
Really feeling you, Todd. I was just noticing Penny's got her tablet sitting next to me, and when she gets a notification, it lights up, so my eyes sort of glance at the moving image. And I just saw that Will Ruddick had just sent her a message because he's coming from Kenya. For those of you who don't know, Will Ruddick is part of Grassroots Economics, and they, they're like best in class in the world for creating local economic exchanges using crypto tools. Like really phenomenal work that they're doing. And the fact that he's jumping on an airplane to come to Barichara, as of yesterday morning, he made the decision, is like, or maybe it was the day before, my days are blending. Yeah, yesterday. We're like, if we're getting Will Ruddick here, it's not about the individual and how important they are, it's what it signifies. What it signifies that someone like Will Ruddick would come from the other side of Africa to come here for this, I think really speaks to exactly what you're saying, Todd. This is unprecedented. the way that we took the initial $50,000 we raised to buy Origen del Agua, set up an advisory council and start circulating it into projects, and how we spiraled those projects into a territorial foundation and other fundraising, and then leveraging it into the acquisition of Las Albercas and leveraging everything into the next thing, the way that we keep doing. And what we're going to do with Gitcoin, like we're going to get $25,000 from Gitcoin or whatever it is, approximately $25,000. We're going to do so much money with, we're going to do so much good with $25,000 in preparation for the next Gitcoin round, without even mentioning what we'll do with alliance forming for the other people in the Gitcoin round in the next time around. And so I sense that this circulation upward, this upward spiral that we're doing. I mean, like 2 days ago, I was on a call with a group from Indigenizing Refi Southeast Asia, because a member of their group was on our Twitter space call for Refi Barichara a couple weeks ago. And their event starts today in Singapore, and they're trying to imitate Refi Barichara in their event. And so we had a call, and I gave them some advice and told them what we were doing. And then yesterday, this woman, Laurel, who lives in Singapore, said, so I've got a Japanese investor who's looking for, blockchain projects for social good. They might want to fund you. Can I put you in touch? And I'm like, sure. It's like, and then someone else who's from region Latin America says, we've got this investor from Peru is looking for blockchain projects in Colombia. Can I put you in touch? And I'm like, sure. And then yesterday I get a message from a woman from Crepes and Waffles. Crepes and Waffles is like a food franchise in Colombia. It's like a fast food restaurant, but they have an integrated supply chain, and all of their ingredients come from agroecology systems. They have a network of agroforestry food forests in Colombia that they use for all of their restaurants. And they're one of their sustainability people, like as of this morning, is going to see if they can work it out to change their plans and drop everything they're doing next week to come to Refi Barichara. And so there's something really, really interesting. Like I said, it's not the number of people. It's going to be 50 people who come to Refi Barichara, maybe 60 by the end of it. But there's something happening in this larger refi space, something really important, and it is replicating. And so I'm very intrigued to bring this guy Evan from Dubuque back to Jonathan and say, so how do we create a supply chain of US nonprofits that can receive crypto? Because none of them know how. How do we do that? How do we, right? Like we're struggling without the Regen Foundation. How do we bring money from the Regen Foundation? We had a call with Austin where Austin from Regen Foundation is going to arrive on Sunday for Refi Barichara. He met Jonathan yesterday. So we have all these connections that are happening. And I'm really intrigued by what this means for Earth regenerators. I'm really intrigued by what this means for the different bioregions. And so just holding the pregnancy of this moment, something is seriously pushing its way into the world.
Yes. Well, and I really want to learn more about each one of these initiatives and how they converge on this whole idea of going beyond conservation finance into regenerative finance. There's a way to connect this into the global conversation about, financial risk in the future, which is, um, at some point, the folks in the finance industry started to realize that if there isn't a planet, there isn't a finance industry. And so it became an issue. Like they hadn't.
The Stern Report. You remember the Stern Report? It was like,
yeah.
2007 or 2006, the Stern Report. When that really came into mainstream discourse.
Yeah. So, and I started to pay attention to some of this, global conversation about risk, and watch this. And, and we had an idea for regenerative financing using some of the models that we're trying to work with here in the U.S. in terms of assessment-based investing. Essentially, I mean, people talk about it as lending, but it's really not lending. It's a third-party investment into properties to make them more efficient, more, ultimately more ecological as well. We tried to extend this to ecosystem restoration. So this is really, fuel for the whole conversation. And it's a matter of how we present this narrative, as you say, and it's the context that we're offering that's going to bring a whole series of initiatives in terms of specific investments and specific bioregions. And that's what I find it most exciting.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this this idea of a bioregional investment platform, together with something I saw. So I worked with a guy named Jason Burnham a few years back, and he helped set up these like $1 million branding dashboards where you like hire a team of 20 designers who are going to set up all of the social media analytics for a company like Coca-Cola, some big company, to track their brand in social media. And that was the kind of work that he did. And when I saw what the analytics dashboards can do, if you have good data streams and you have good visualization, then you can actually tell very complex stories about what's happening to your story in the world. And actually, when I was with The Rules, there was a guy that was joined a team just before I was kicked out of The Rules, which is its own story of trauma history. But they actually created a branding analytics engine to track memes within social movements. And when they closed The Rules, they birthed a company called Culture Hack Lab, which is based in Vancouver, British Columbia, although most of their activities are actually done out of Costa Rica. And I've been advising their founder because he's someone who wanted me to be on his PhD committee before the gag order was placed. He wasn't allowed to talk to me because of what happened at The Rules. But they've been doing this work in a modest way, but not super well. But what I think is powerful is that these data analytics frameworks, which can measure and manage systemic risk, can be applied to portfolios of projects. So you could set up a data sensor system to track water flow in a river and watch watershed restoration and connect it to strategic investment across a portfolio of projects in that watershed and actually manage risks by funding the portfolio. And this becomes, instead of hedge funds, you have other bundled assets. And one of the biggest problems, if you remember the default swaps and all that shit from 2008, 2009, it was that the more they bundled financial instruments, the more they became disconnected from the real world. Yes, JP, ESG for real. ESG for real is that you bundle real projects with real trust networks grounded to real geography, like drainage basins of rivers. And the container of your bundle is physics. The container of your bundle is the world. And this is what, if people understood that bioregions are the ultimate replacement of hedge funds, like if you want to bundle a complex set of financial instruments into something you can really manage risk with, it'd be fucking bioregions. But people don't get it yet. So got to create the first one of these. And this is so damn important because there are trillions of dollars in the carbon market, which is a ridiculously reductionistic way of thinking. But just look at how much money is in conservation biology for biodiversity as well. Look at how much money is set aside for poverty or for disaster relief. For these mass, and we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars in equivalent in different currencies that cannot touch the ground because they don't know how to manage risk. And I remember when I talked to John Fullerton, because I worked with him for almost a year, that he was trying to communicate risk, and he's a finance guy, and he struggled to do it. He struggled to get the finance people to understand this. And when I worked with Bob Bishop, and we were talking with their reinsurance companies like Swiss Re and Munich Re, that basically are the insurance for the insurance companies when disasters are too big. Like, how many insurance companies are going to go bankrupt with Hurricane Ian this week? The reinsurance companies back those things. And they would really be able to put resources behind bioregions, collaborating with international development banks. I mean, the infrastructure exists to shift the flow, but I don't think it's going to get there. But if it gets there at all, it's because we've done these bioregional experiments. So there's something super important in what we're doing that most people have no idea how to talk about. Yeah, Todd.
I want to jump in here too, because this is kind of touching a theme for this week and some of the conversations that I've been having with Alex Korn and kind of the Colorado network. The Regenerative Community Land Trust is one of a few organizations that's kind of doing work on the ground here. Joe, have you met Thomas Morgan and Basin Dow?
Yeah, I've met Timo, and we're definitely mutual admirers, but we haven't got to hang out enough yet.
Okay. Well, I've been having some conversations with him. He's probably one of the bigger players here. Just for those on the call who may not have the background, he's comes from the real estate financing world. So real estate deals and land acquisitions, and specifically how do we create financing structures and financing instruments to acquire land, ideally to put it in the commons. But we've been talking about what's been going on in Florida and how that impacts what Joe was just speaking to is insurability and solvency for some of these insurance companies. I wanted to jump in here because I think it's fairly relevant. My last role in the corporate world was in a data science team looking at the quantification of organizational risk, which is distinct from financial risk, but actually is a related kind of field and study. I think with the work that we're doing on Vivero, we're building out those initial data streams that could lead to a much more kind of robust dashboarding system that we could use to look at kind of like a whole bioregion and the benefits that are producing, not just for itself, but kind of across a spectrum in a whatever, I guess the higher level of a bioregion would be, a continent, if you will. I think it's highly relevant. I think we're already kind of on the path to doing kind of the interesting data work that would be a prerequisite to looking at whole scale kind of bioregional health. I have a background in insurance as well. I was a licensed insurance adjuster during Hurricane Sandy. I was licensed in Texas, and my dad has been active as a catastrophe insurance adjuster over the past decade and continues to remain an insurance adjuster. He's hoping to retire soon, but he'll likely be headed to Florida fairly soon. So all of this is to say, without sounding too self-promotional, like I am focused on kind of the work that Joe just spoke to, and interested in understanding how we can create bioregionally meaningful data that could be leveraged to create resiliency. I think the kind of the modern American approach to that is insurance, though.
Hey, Todd, can I just share something that's bubbling up for me?
Yes, please.
Because it just feels really timely. We need to have a call with Alex, with Timo, with Antonio, with you, and with me, where you can pick anyone else you want to bring. We need to define the role that you just named, and we need to fund the money for you to do it for this network of organizations. This is something we should eminently be able to do. We should be able to start with a one-year position. I think this is totally doable. I feel like looking for a job is the wrong approach for you, and I've been feeling that every time you talk about your failed job search. We need to invent it. And the way we invent it is we pull the money for it. We don't invent it by naming it, you start doing it, and then you find the money. No, fuck that. We name it within the cluster of people and say, where's the money to do this? And we do it. And I want to just show a graphic that I used in the Bioregional updates yesterday, just because it's so relevant to what we're saying right now. So I'm going to share the screen really quickly. This is a graphic that I created 2 years ago for the Earth Regeneration Fund webinar. This is a cartoon. This is a mock-up. See, all I did is I just took pictures from Google image search and made this. I was like, what if there was a dashboard that integrated data flows from a supply chain into a multi-ledger system? And we took energy flows of the Earth system, meaning relevant data like climate data or whatever from the Earth. So there's massive sensor networks of the Earth system. Supply chains information from human economy. We're going to prototype this here in Barichara with things like agroforestry systems. So it'll be really concrete and small enough scale you can physically visit the model. You can jump in a tuk-tuk for 20 minutes and go to the farm to see the supply chains. This is super important to be able to look under the hood. And then we have nutrient cycles of ecosystems. This is soil restoration. This is biodiversity. This is tracking the growth of a tree and measuring carbon sequestration. This is what the Ecolabs group is doing that's coming here this week. And then we map landscapes as integrated systems to cluster them into portfolios of projects. I just wanted to show you, this is a mock-up I made 2 years ago. Like I said, it's a cartoon, because the real version of this would be incredibly complex. It would be like an MIT Research Institute or something to actually do this. But what this cartoon graphic signifies is what Todd was just saying. If we could build this integrated data management system together with real world supply chain management, which simply means managing a real world local economy, like what we're talking about doing in Margarita's house with Mercado Local, where we have a little tienda for producers to bring their things, their products from the farm, transform them into value-added products, sell them into the local community, and track it with some kind of data management system, which could just be the inventory of the store. So I'm talking like, this is the kind of thing that we're going to be speaking about in very concrete terms next week at Refi Barichara, is how to prototype this within the real living economy of Barichara. But what Todd was just talking about is how to do it for the Hudson River Valley, for the food shed of Boulder, for et cetera, like for much more complex economies than the one we have here. But you gotta prototype it with something that's manageably available and accessible. And so I just want to
we can, yeah. And I really appreciate the visualization. We can, it's fairly easy to start small. And I think we already have the tools in place to start small. I wanted to end with a thought around risk. I see, and this is kind of one of the biggest triggers for me that kind of instantiated my move from finance, I guess my move out of finance and banking, is this understanding that risk and value are on the same spectrum. And that we could build all these risk tools, but ultimately what that's showing us is the kind of where fear and kind of uncertainty lie. But if we focus on the other spectrum, we can focus on benefit, and that's actually tangible. That's like agricultural capacity, and it's reflective of kind of actual value creation. And so if we can look at a bioregion and maximize benefit and maximize value for multiple stakeholders, that I think is where the meaningful work, that's the touch point between what we're doing here in Barichara and what we're doing with the bioregional approach and its potential application into some of the existing issues within finance and banking, and really the reason they can't grok or even understand a bioregional approach. And if we can tell that story well, I think we can find a connection to some of the issues that are being grappled with in the mainstream kind of finance and risk world.
Yeah, I wanted to add something that Penny just wrote on a piece of paper to me, which is that I had a really great call with Mike and Yubi from Future Thinkers, because they want to deeply collaborate, and they're coming to Barichara. They're not coming next week, but they're going to come and stay here for a few months over the winter, and we're gonna converge on the work that, for those of you who don't know, Mike is really phenomenal at creating graphic design that is based on artificial intelligence and that is programmable. So you can have programmable artificial intelligence graphic design that he connects to NFTs. So you can basically create an infinite variation of non-fungible tokens, which means you can tailor, fit them or customize them to real world things. And because he's a usability and graphics designer, it includes building the dashboard. And so when they raised money for their project in Alberta, Canada, to buy a golf course and campground and turn it into a smart eco village, which is what they're better known for at the moment, because that was a big move they played 2 years ago, that they're actually looking at how to create smart grid sensors to track the regeneration of these landscapes using NFT tools to enable shared equity and investment. But they've been doing it within the eco-village model, which I think that they're going to see after they learn about what we're doing in Barichara, that you have to do a bioregional model. You actually can't do it within a contained project. You have to do it within a clustering of projects. And so, which I think they intuitively get, but they don't have a place to apply it. And so we're going to be trying to do things like that here in Barichara, which means it is very replicable. Like once we build the basic architecture, the basic prototypes, others will be able to try adapting it to their own landscapes. So there's something really subtle about what's happening in Barichara right now, because it is the landscape that can hold this integration, whereas this integration is needed in every landscape. And so that's what's interesting about Cosmoverse and DevCon happening in Colombia, and having just the right set of people coming to Barichara, which is then catalyzing people like Mike and Yuvi to come, or catalyzing our deeper collaboration. And so this, I think, is our real opportunity, is how do we leverage this, bootstrap this into alliances? That seems to be the key. How do we form collaborative alliances? And I'm going to be facilitating emergence throughout the next week to try to land at landscape scale funding governance models that we have to collaborate to create, so that what we've been talking about in the last hour is what we begin to create with the participants of Refi Barichara. But then that's going to come right back to all the rest of you who are not at Refi Barichara, because you don't have to be. You don't have to be here physically to be a part of this. JP, please.
I'm going to have to jump off to the fund governance call. But what I wanted to say on the heels of what you've just said, Joe, is something that we've learned in ER. And that's that to be successful in doing the groups of groups, the collaboration of groups, we have to give the time necessary to build trust and relationship. We can't get married right away. It's so important. I just wanted to note that before I bid you all farewell and jump on to the next Zoom.
Well, JP, just so you know, I finished 3 hours of interviews with David Sloan Wilson, have another 90-minute session this afternoon. We're beginning the thick narrative history of ER as a cultural evolution research project of ProSocial. So you will be interviewed soon for that, of course, but we're beginning to show exactly what you just said.
And I'm just encouraging that in the sort of territorial groups of groups, collaborations, that same model be extended. You know, because we've taken years to deepen our relationships, we're solid, right? We're just much more solid. And it's so tempting, I think, when you bring organizations together to go, well, we're all cool. We can just go ahead and do this collaboration. And then because the relationships have not been forged yet, it doesn't go quite as planned.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to note that. And thank you, everyone. I will see you, I am sure, very soon.
Thank you, JP. And I think we should wrap
Yeah.
up this call because others will want to jump to the other call as well. And I feel like we're at a good place of, I think we have touched on enough clarity in this conversation to just keep carrying it in our hearts and in our minds into the next conversations.
Thank you so much.
So yeah,
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
It's been fun.
Cheers. Thanks, Joe.
Onward.
Bye, all.
Paula, we'll see you tomorrow. And goodbye.